Did you know there are countries so dirty that walking their streets is a challenge for your senses? Places where the air is unbreathable, the water is contaminated, and trash is part of the daily landscape. But this isn't just about aesthetics. What happens when millions of people live surrounded by filth and disease? Today, I'll take you on a shocking journey through the 10 dirtiest countries in the world. From toxic waste to foul-smelling streets, you'll discover how they got to this point and why the situation keeps worsening. Plus, halfway through the video, I'll reveal which is the cleanest country in the world. With that said, let's begin. At number 10, a country ravaged by war, Syria. Syria is famous for its millennia-old history and rich cultural heritage. Damascus, considered one of the oldest cities in the world, is filled with tales of ancient civilizations, trade routes, and the undeniable mark left by empires like the Ottoman and Roman. It's also known for its textiles, cuisine, and impressive archaeological heritage, including places like Palmyra. However, after years of conflict, the reality in many Syrian regions has turned bleak. Streets once vibrant with markets and culture are now filled with rubble, trash, and, in the worst cases, bodies due to violence and the lack of infrastructure to handle them properly. Drinking water is scarce, sanitation systems are precarious, and with the destruction of waste management facilities, people often live surrounded by piles of garbage. Statistics on diseases linked to pollution and unsanitary conditions are alarming. International organizations report skyrocketing cases of cholera, typhoid fever, and other intestinal illnesses in areas without functional sewage systems. According to World Health Organization estimates, thousands of deaths in Syria each year could be linked to the lack of clean water and exposure to waste. Imagine walking through dusty streets filled with unfiltered combustion smoke, remnants of explosions, and the despair of not finding a properly equipped hospital. That's the reality for many Syrians who, amid the devastation of war, have come to accept filth as normal. But don't go anywhere, because what I'm about to tell you about the next countries will show you how precariousness and lack of policies can turn an entire place into an open-air landfill. Stay with us, as what you'll discover might change your perspective on global pollution. This nation, nestled in the heart of Africa, is known for its immense natural wealth. It boasts national parks home to elephants, gorillas, and other endangered species, as well as unique geological formations and a subsoil rich in diamonds and gold. The Central African Republic is, on paper, an ecological gem. The problem? Decades of political instability and conflict have prevented the establishment of basic cleaning or infrastructure systems. In many of its cities, garbage collection is practically non-existent, so streets are flooded with waste. The lack of drinking water forces much of the population to consume contaminated sources, increasing the risk of diarrheal diseases, malaria, and other infections. Beyond that, chronic poverty and limited international support have created a vicious cycle where people without resources pollute rivers and soil to survive, which in turn worsens their health. Health organizations estimate thousands of deaths annually from cholera and acute diarrhea outbreaks. It's not uncommon for urban centers to accumulate organic waste, producing unbearable odors and attracting scavenger animals. In some neighborhoods, it's common to see children rummaging through trash to find something to eat or sell, exposing themselves to countless infections. The Central African Republic's story is one of cultural resilience and imposing nature, but also of a fragile system that has placed it on the brink of environmental catastrophe. So don't stop here. In the coming minutes, I'll show you even more dramatic realities. You'll see how the lack of environmental policies can turn an entire country into a place where air, water, and land are practically weapons against its own people. At number 8, Mongolia. Mongolia is globally recognized for its vast steppes, the legacy of Genghis Khan, and its impressive equestrian tradition. For many travelers, it represents Asia's last great frontier, with rugged landscapes that captivate anyone who visits. However, in winter, the situation in its capital, Ulaanbaatar, is critical. Extreme cold forces millions to use low-quality coal and wood for heating, creating a cloud of pollution that can rival that of major industrial cities. The result is heavy air loaded with PM 2.5 and PM 10 particles, considered highly harmful to health. Environmental data shows that during the coldest months, the concentration of these particles can exceed the safe limit set by the WHO several times over. This leads to a rise in respiratory illnesses. The smog is so dense that navigating the city becomes an ordeal for those unaccustomed to such pollution levels. Additionally, waste management infrastructure is inadequate in peripheral areas, so open-air landfills can grow unchecked, with a stench that envelops entire communities. Knowing that such a majestic place is succumbing to pollution makes us reflect on how development, if not planned responsibly, can destroy an entire country's health. Stay with me, as we're about to dive into even more devastated areas due to filth and neglect. Historically, Afghanistan has been a crossroads for the Silk Road, with a rich cultural heritage that includes mystical poetry and impressive desert fortresses. It has produced legendary heroes and ancient musical and artistic traditions. But if we step into its streets today, especially in Kabul, the capital, we encounter a bleak scene. Years of war and governmental neglect have led to mountains of uncollected garbage. Dead animals are a common sight on the streets, and the lack of drinking water forces people to rely on contaminated wells. Restrictions and extreme poverty push food and sanitation to the back burner for many families. According to UNICEF, hundreds of children die annually from diseases linked to unsafe water and exposure to decomposing waste. Air pollution, worsened by constant conflict and the burning of low-grade fuel, fills people's lungs with soot. When people lack access to health care and education, it's nearly impossible to foster awareness about environmental cleanliness, let alone implement systems to ensure waste collection. You're probably wondering, if Afghanistan's situation is this dire, what must it be like in the countries coming up next? I assure you, the situation doesn't improve, so pay attention, because this is just the beginning. Iraq, once the cradle of glorious civilizations like Mesopotamia, home to legendary cities like Babylon, takes pride in having been a hub of knowledge, astronomy, and engineering during the medieval Islamic era. However, for decades, it has been mired in conflicts that have devastated its infrastructure. The consequences? The streets of Baghdad and other cities are filled with makeshift landfills, and the mix of insecurity and lack of a strong central government results in near non-existent sanitation conditions. Stagnant water channels with floating garbage and a rotting stench that can be smelled from meters away are common. Power outages force the population to use diesel generators, filling the air with smoke and microparticles that worsen asthma and lung issues. According to the International Red Cross, a significant portion of child deaths in Iraq is due to diarrheal and respiratory diseases caused by widespread filth and unsanitary conditions. Add to this the military waste and chemical pollution left behind by years of conflict and bombings. One can't help but wonder how millions of people survive in an environment with so many daily threats. Stick around until the end, because what we'll uncover about the next destinations will leave you speechless. We've reached the halfway point, and a promise is a promise. What's the cleanest country in the world? It's a very cold country. Yes, it's Finland. According to the WHO, it's the country with the best air quality, drinking water, and green spaces. Want to know why? We'll reveal it at the end of the video. At number 5, Nigeria. Known worldwide for its powerful film industry, Nollywood, as well as its rich Afrobeat music and literature from authors like Chinua Achebe, Nigeria is Africa's largest economy. However, this economic potential hasn't translated into adequate infrastructure to manage the waste of a population exceeding 200 million. Cities like Lagos and Onitsha face air pollution levels that, during the dry season, border on unbearable, and their waters are filled with chemical and industrial waste. Lagos's slums, located in lagoons or canals, are drowning in garbage. People live literally on top of plastic waste, rusted metal, and decomposing organic matter. Some NGOs report that water pollution causes at least 150,000 Nigerian deaths annually from waterborne diseases. Additionally, areas where electronic waste is burned have become some of the worst pollution hotspots, releasing toxic substances like lead and mercury that can cause irreversible nervous system damage. It's shocking to see Nigeria's oil wealth coexist with such dire lack of basic sanitation services and environmental chaos that claims lives. Let's keep going, as the fourth place on this list paints an even grimmer picture. At number 4, Chad. Chad is known for its spectacular namesake lake and its stunning deserts and savannas, home to giraffes, elephants, and lions. However, most of its population suffers extreme poverty, living on less than $1 a day with very limited access to health care and education. In urban areas, garbage piles up in the streets, mixed with dead animals and human waste due to the lack of sewage systems. Humanitarian organizations report that recent years have seen epidemics directly linked to poor hygiene and sanitation, such as cholera. A high percentage of child deaths in Chad is tied to gastrointestinal infections worsened by contaminated water consumption. The smell of rot permeates certain neighborhoods, and most people don't even have masks to protect themselves from the dust mixed with piles of waste. With every step, it becomes clearer that these places suffer not only from poverty, but also from a combination of historical, political, and even colonial factors. If you're unsettled by what's coming next, don't move, because the next country shows a striking convergence of environmental devastation and filth. India, with over 1.3 billion inhabitants, is known for its vibrant culture, colorful festivals, unmatched cuisine, and historical past, including great empires and architectural wonders like the Taj Mahal. However, rapid industrialization and uncontrolled urbanization in cities like Delhi, Mumbai, and Kolkata have led to one of the planet's greatest environmental disasters. Air pollution in Delhi has reached levels where schools must close during certain times of the year, and visibility can drop to the point where driving is unsafe. Additionally, India is home to some of the world's most sacred rivers, like the Ganges, which is sadly also one of the most polluted. Tons of industrial, chemical, and even human waste are dumped into its waters yearly, creating a breeding ground for infections and diseases affecting millions who use it for bathing and drinking. Waste management is no less dire. Many cities have massive landfills, veritable mountains of plastic and organic matter where dogs and rats roam, and where resource-poor families scavenge for something to sell or eat. Data on premature deaths linked to air pollution exceed 1.5 million annually in the country. Additionally, the lack of access to toilets in much of the rural and urban marginal population leads to scenes where streets are used as open-air bathrooms, fueling disease spread. India reflects the complexity of a giant advancing in technology and science, but failing to provide something as basic as clean streets and breathable air to most of its citizens. Pakistan, with its rich history spanning the Indus Valley civilization, religious monuments for Islam, Hinduism, and Sikhism, and majestic landscapes like the Karakoram Peaks, is now grappling with a serious pollution problem. Cities like Karachi and Lahore record extremely high air pollution levels, especially in winter when smog becomes oppressive and hazardous to health. Waste management is nearly non-existent in slums, where people live alongside mountains of garbage that often block stormwater channels. When the rainy season arrives, flooding becomes more destructive because water can't flow through the accumulated trash. The problems extend to drinking water, with about a third of the population lacking access to clean water, promoting the spread of cholera, hepatitis, and other infections. At least 100,000 deaths annually are linked to poor hygiene and extreme unsanitary conditions, according to local organizations. It's striking to think that a country with such cultural and natural heritage carries such environmental misery. Stay until the end, because the #1 spot is perhaps the most striking example of a territory where filth has taken on a life of its own. What country do you think is #1? Any guesses? It's Bangladesh. Bangladesh is renowned for its high population density, its cuisine based on curry and rice, and for having one of the world's largest deltas, formed by the Ganges, Brahmaputra, and Meghna rivers. It's a country rich in cultural traditions, folk music, and a resilient spirit in the face of adversity. However, it has become the epitome of rampant pollution. The capital, Dhaka, is one of the most polluted cities on the planet. The air is filled with emissions from textile factories, old vehicles, and millions of diesel-powered generators. Waste management is so poor that much of the city smells of decomposing garbage mixed with stagnant water. For many, walking means dodging piles of waste and puddles with sulfuric odors. According to the WHO, air pollution in Bangladesh causes over 160,000 premature deaths annually. Additionally, dyeing and tanning factories dump chemicals into rivers and canals where communities fish and source water. The result? Outbreaks of diseases like cholera and other diarrheal illnesses, along with skin issues and malformations linked to prolonged exposure to heavy metals. Seeing images of Bangladesh is heart-wrenching. People living in shanties built amid landfills, entire families bathing in toxic waters, and air so murky the sky is barely visible. With this picture, it's easy to understand why it tops this list of the dirtiest countries. We've reached the end. Why is Finland the cleanest country? Finland is considered the world's cleanest country thanks to its strict environmental policies and commitment to sustainability. Its air is among the purest on the planet, according to the WHO, due to limited fossil fuel use and respect for its vast forests, which cover 75% of its territory. Additionally, its waste management is exemplary, recycling nearly 100% of its waste and using it to generate energy. It also stands out for its high-quality drinking water and focus on renewable energy, ensuring a healthy and clean environment for its citizens. We've reached the end of this grim journey through the 10 most polluted, foul-smelling, and chaotic countries in terms of cleanliness. Behind each of these stories, we see how poverty, corruption, and often the legacy of historical processes like colonization have left irreversible scars affecting millions of people. Each country faces its own maze of causes and effects: foreign debt, ineffective policies, armed conflicts, inadequate infrastructure, overpopulation. The list of reasons is as vast as it is tragic. In conclusion, filth and pollution aren't just aesthetic issues. They're killing people, destroying ecosystems, and perpetuating cycles of poverty that seem endless. Millions of deaths each year could be prevented with solutions ranging from basic hygiene education to large-scale waste management and water treatment plans. However, the reality is that few governments and companies are willing or able to allocate the resources needed to address the root problem. Thank you for joining me on this journey, which I hope has given you a deeper perspective on the scale of pollution and the importance of not looking the other way. If you found this insightful, I invite you to leave a like and subscribe, as there are more stories to tell and realities that deserve to be heard. Help us spread this message further so that together we can aspire to a cleaner, more dignified planet for all its inhabitants. Thank you for being here.